Hey, delighted to have you here. As always, let's talk about today's topic, which is the connect call, the first call as part of your sales process. As I say, I call it the connect call. You may have heard it called other things, but in essence, that first conversation you have with any inbound prospects. So people have inquired through your website or social media to book a call with you, book a consultation, just submitted an inquiry, and you followed up to organize the call. So let's talk a little bit about the structure of it first, and then we get into some of the questions you should be asking later on in the video. So first of all, the structure. So what I would suggest is, in terms of planning and getting this call booked in, you want to make it as frictionless as possible for the prospect. Make it so easy to do. One of my favourite ways is, and you have to be a little bit mindful of this if you're getting too many leads, but particularly as you're starting out, this is a good way, is make it so they can book the call with you through your inquiry form. So you kind of cut out the back and forth. Maybe you embed your meeting calendar on your website. You have a drop-down menu with times, and you can follow up with an invite. But I much prefer meeting calendars if possible because it saves your time as well as the prospects. So the client goes through to your website, inquires about your services, and then they can submit a time to book a call with you. And it all gets synced up in your calendar. Again, depending on what you use, you can use Calendly, you can use HubSpot. There's lots of these calendar like scheduling tools, and you can embed things like Zoom or your video platform so that what happens is they book a time, it goes out to both calendars, and it pulls through a Zoom link. It's all scheduled nice and easy. So you want to make that as frictionless as possible for all parties. It's fantastic. It goes into your calendar, goes into theirs. Absolutely great. So that's the starting point in terms of the structure of the call. In terms of the timeline of that call, what I would suggest is you want to make sure that you can do that within around sort of a day or two from the inquiry. You don't want it to go on for too long, but similarly, you don't necessarily want to speak to them straight away. I'll link to the video I did on research for your sales leads, because what will happen is if you book the call, say after 24 hours, you will then have some time to do some research. You can actually set it to like 4 hours, depending on what your schedule's like. So someone could inquire at 12 o'clock and book a call with you at 4 p.m., but it gives you some time at least to be able to do some research prior to that call. That's going to make it a much more beneficial call for both parties as well. So that's one point. In terms of the length of the call itself, I would suggest about 15 to 20 minutes. And again, you can book that into your kind of the calendar tool, so they can only book that amount of time rather than booking an hour of your time. That is way too much time for the first sales call. There is absolutely no need to speak to a prospect for an hour. I'm going to explain why in a moment. So 15 to 20 minutes is ideal for that first connect call. Now, think of the call as more not a sales call at all. As I say, a connect call, I quite like the word because it is a connection between you and the prospect to see if there's a fit, but also it's almost like a solution providing call. Not in detail yet, we'll come back to that in future calls, and I'll do some videos on that as well. But at the moment, at this first call, it's a little bit like getting to understand the prospect and seeing if there is the potential for further conversation, which will then get into some of that solution providing. But at the moment, it's not a sales call. What does that mean in terms of the kind of dynamic of the call? It should be 80-20 in the prospect's favor in terms of who's talking. So you're there to facilitate the call, ask questions, make them feel valued and you're interested in, which you should genuinely be, of course, and they'll be talking more as well. If possible, ask the client or the prospect if you can record the call, because that's going to be valuable information if you do move forward onto the next stage. So during that call, you're going to be asking questions such as, tell me a little bit about your business in your own words. You might underpin that by saying, I've had a look at your website, I've looked at your social media profiles, I understand what you do, it's X, Y, Z. However, I'd love to hear in your own words, how did the business get started? Where did the idea come from? Okay. You can also ask about the background of the individual themselves. If they've started this business, if it's a small accountancy practice, maybe they will, did their degree in accountancy, they got their exams, and then they worked in an accountancy firm for a period of time. So you can understand a little bit about their background, and that's where you'll start to just tease out these little bits of information about like their desires, their goals, their challenges, etc. It's good to ask about the core values of themselves and the business, for many reasons, but also, again, we're talking about that fit on this connect call. So what you want to do is you want to work with clients that have similar values to yourself. Of course, you don't want to be perfectly aligned on everything, and that's absolutely fine, but you want to make sure you do have some of those core values that align well. You're also going to want to understand a little bit about where the client wants to get to, where the prospect wants to get to, in terms of, obviously depends on the service that you're offering. If you're, doing design or marketing or building a website for them, where is it they want to get to? Why are they talking to you today? Why have they inquired? And then you want to understand a bit about what's preventing them from getting there currently. So now you get into some of their problems. What is the problem? You want to get to here and you're currently here. Why can you not get there of your own ways, basically? Or have they had problems doing it, trying to do this with other suppliers or freelancers or businesses, anything else like that? And then you want to start understand a bit about the values. So sometimes we call that the gap analysis. Where do they want to get to? Where are they now? What's the gap? And then we're analysing that gap. What's the value of getting to that, over that hurdle or across that bridge for them as their business? Because then you can start to understand, you're not getting into it yet, but you start to understand the financial value, the investment of the project. Because if that's a massive thing for them, if they can get this new website built with an e-commerce function, for example, or they can get this new marketing campaign to launch into a new market, to a new audience, you can see the value of your service to them, and then you can start to build out if that's the type of client you want to work with, and the value of the project in terms of financially, if that suits you as well. Now, that's just a loose structure of some of the questions you can ask. What I would say is twofold. Firstly, you can go off on a little bit of a tangent. If there's something of interest, explore that a bit further, maybe ask some supplementary questions. Also, but on the kind of flip side of that, you're going to want to make sure you rein the conversation in, because you don't want it to try and get away. You want to end this call before it feels like you should. So there's still more conversation to have, okay? And then you're going to wrap it up, and you're going to get to that point where you've had some good conversation, but you haven't gone too far out. You've reined it back in. You've kept the framework and the structure of the call. You've got a little bit of interest and excitement on their side because they can see that you're interested in them. You've done your research, and it's like a bit of rapport has been built, hopefully. Then you're going to stop that call and you're going to say, right, it's been great speaking with you. I'd love to book a follow-up call. And this is where you're going to get into some more detail and you can book some more time. I'll talk about this in detail on the video, further video. This is just about that connect call. But the goal of the connect call is to do some very initial rapport building, that connection, see if there's a fit, and if there is, to book the follow-up call. You're going to want to do that within 2 or 3 days. You don't want to let this go on for too long. And again, it might give you the opportunity to do some further research and analysis of what you learned on the call. And always book the call while you're still on the call, if that makes sense. So don't go off and email back and forth. You're going to lose momentum. While they're on that call, open up your calendar, get them to open up their calendar, find a time, send the invite, get them to accept it. It's all confirmed within 20 minutes. So you've had this great connect call, you've built up some rapport, a little bit of momentum, you've got your next call booked in a couple of days, which we'll talk about in further videos. But that is a fantastic start to the sales process for you and for the prospect, and then you can hopefully get some momentum going into the next call.